Okay, we are recording and live streaming when you are ready, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, at 10 o'clock, I'd like to call the Isabella County Board of Commissioners Finance and Administration Committee meeting to order. This is a hybrid meeting, which means it's in person and electronic, but for anything to count, commissioners have to be in person according to the law of the state of Michigan as we sit here today. First of all, call to order, which I just did. Next, approval of the agenda. Commissioner Jelezinski, is there anything you'd like to add to the agenda? I do not. Okay, I have nothing either, so I will close that part of it and move call to the public. I will spend my seat and turn. I will spend my seat back and turn to Nicole. Nicole, do we have anybody on the virtual?
We do not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will close public comment then and then move on to item number 4, consider approving the fiscal year 2023 budget amendment 2022.
Okay, excellent. So we have first quarter budget amendments, and I don't think we've ever done these before. As we were talking about, well, where do we find the money? We find some expenditures we know we have to adjust. Where do we find the money? Well, in the first quarter, it's really hard, right, to project. We do have a very few revenue lines that are already over the 100% mark. But at this first quarter, do you really accept all that and think you're going to get everything else at 100% too? It's hard to do. And we thought, well, what did we do last year? Well, we started the process in January, so the first quarter was already done of the budget. So this really is kind of the first time we're bringing forth first quarter budget amendments. But the reason we're doing it now is so that when we bring forward the first quarter quarterly report to the board, these budget amendments are already approved and built in. So 2 things. The first budget amendment we're going to go over is other funds, and then we'll do general funds second. So most of these expenditures, it just kind of became known at budget time, the amounts that we included in all the departments through all the funds didn't include budget for cell phones, some cell phones that were increasing, some copy costs and fax machine costs. Even though they seem a little archaic, we do still have some of those expenses. So this budget amendment really in large part serves to build those expenses in that we overlooked at budget time, right? So other funds, their fund balances are going to cover these increases. You can see off the top, Parks and Rec is just a $500 increase. Expenses are on the bottom part of the page, revenues are on the top. So we're taking or decreasing fund balance by $500 to increase their expenses by $500. And again, these are all attributed to either fax, cell phone, copy machine costs, that type of thing. You can see friend of the court is increasing expenditures just over 4,000. Commission on Aging about 1,500, childcare 1,000, central dispatch 550, inspections 175, and recycling 200. So that's all from those costs. Then the part that you see for Lake Isabella water supply, the $32,000 increase that we're using from the Lake Isabella water supply, actually using American Rescue Plan dollars to pay for a well rehab. Now this well rehab is well number 2. It's been on the books to redo since fiscal 21. It was approved in the fiscal 21 budget as capital. I couldn't tell you in the beginning what funds were going to be used for that. In fiscal 21, we probably didn't have ARPA at that time. It would have been out of the Lake Isabella water supply system. The project didn't get done in fiscal 21. So in fiscal 22, the board approved well number 2 rehab at Lake Isabella water supply in the amount of $32,000 that it was to come from ARPA direct revenues. This was before the ARPA work group. Before we even had that work group. This was in the budget for 22. Again, in 22, the project did not happen. In fiscal 23, this gets confusing, they brought forward the rehab of well number 1 at the budget time. So when, as we sit here fiscal 23, well number 1 is approved for capital out of the Lake Isabella Water Supply Funds, not ARPA. But we still have this well number 2 that never got done. In the past, it was approved by the board in the budget to use ARPA dollars. And that's why in the budget amendment, we're saying, let's bring this project forward again. Let's budget to do it in this year, still using ARPA dollars because that's what had been previously approved by the board. It's a long story to get these wells rehabbed, but I'm really happy to say Chris Whitmer has really helped the drain office, and we have an RFB out right now for wells 1 and 2 together. We're gonna get this project done this year. Let's hope. So I just want to point out the long story about the wells, but it's confusing because I know we brought the well number 1 rehab through the ARPA work group and it didn't fly. So I just want to point out the difference between that. Is there any discussion or questions about that process?
Sure. No, you answered the one question I was gonna bring up. My next question, I guess my only statement, and I think I know the answer to this already, we're showing an increase in revenue, that the decrease will come when the project is completed or started. Because you're increasing revenue to 64, where's your corresponding decrease?
Well, because this gets funky, and help me out, accountants, but because Lake Isabella Water Supply is an enterprise fund,
Right.
we actually don't budget the expenditure. We only would budget for the year's depreciation of that expenditure. How'd I do, ladies?
Capitalized,
Okay,
well, that's it, you don't put it, it's gonna get removed, it's when it goes in the expense account, it's gonna get picked out of there and put up in their balance sheet, you know, when it becomes capitalized.
okay. That's fine.
Great question.
Uh-huh.
They keep me honest every day. It's a great question.
Okay. I don't see anything else in regards to it. Very good report. I'll make a motion. There you do the first one. I'll do the second.
I'll move that the consideration of approving fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-4, first quarter budget adjustments for other funds be moved to the work session next Tuesday.
And I will support that. Any further discussion on the matter? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, the same. It will go forward then to the next board meeting. Next up, fiscal year 2020 budget amendment of 2023-05, the general fund budget.
Yes, so these, again, all general fund, again, a lot of them attributed to telephone, cell phone, fax, copy machine costs. We just missed it at budget time. I think we had some increases come in at budget time on other IT related things. I think we thought all of this was built in, and it was just an increase in IT related things. So we're building it in now. A lot of times throughout the year, when we need to increase an expense in a department, we'll look inside that department to help cover that, right? We'll look inside for available funds from that department. Because these were things we missed at budget time, we really work hard to not have a department necessarily cover for that expense, right? So you'll see the first revenue on this budget amendment is the use of fund balance in the amount of $21,879 to make possible these increase in expenditures. So the other revenue we have coming in on the plus side, we've got sheriff's revenue coming in of just almost $7,500. This was a fraud case that the sheriff's office, there were no, no identifiable victims in the case. And so sheriff's office was able to maintain that revenue. Usually, if you're listening, Sheriff, he likes to play let's make a deal. And so this is the first time maybe it's ever happened to him, but we're grabbing that and building it into the budget amendment, maybe before he can make a deal with it. The next revenue line is just over $10,000. This is actually at budget time, we built in revenue for the jail property for that farming lease. We built that into the jail fund, the 466 fund. But USDA has told us that those revenues don't go in that fund. Kind of shocking. I thought any revenue we made off that property would have to go into that fund. But they've told us, nope, that's general fund. So we're building that revenue in here. That's the revenue for not only the $200 per acre rent, but also the amount of the taxes that have to be paid each year. And we are paying those out of general fund. So this covers the rent and the payment of taxes. So that's just over $10,000 to the good. So as you go through the expenses, again, I won't really talk about the ones that have to do with long distance or internet or fax costs. We've overburdened that already. I will talk about the ones that aren't those things. In admin, we do have a little bit of overtime creeping up in our budget. We did not budget for that. And I believe most of that is our payroll and benefits administrator position. She's really been taking on a lot. She's really been incorporating some new things, and it's just taking time. I know we've made some cuts here in admin, so this is a sign that maybe we've cut a little far, but we're having to cover that expense. If you come down to the prosecuting attorney's office, the 101229 department, you'll just see a shift in dollars, $2,200 from health insurance to cash in lieu. So basically that means they've had a new hire that's not taking the insurance. Instead, they're taking the cash in lieu of insurance. So we're building monies into that. Does that mean later on down the year, we'll see some savings in the health insurance line? Probably, but with all the turnover, we don't want to touch that too much. We want to build it into where we know we're going to need it. That still staying in the prosecuting attorney's office, that large expenditure of $14,450, if you'll see, has a corresponding decrease in expenditure for another line item. It's just something they've been paying out of a certain line item, and we're shifting that. So budget dollars had been budgeted for the wrong line item. So that's just we're just correcting the line item that's paid out of. And if you look down, facilities is the same type of thing. I think that was for the Otis elevator maintenance contract. We've been paying it out of the county administration building budget, and it should be from the court building. So we're just moving those around. New vehicles and sheriff, we are increasing the capital improvement that was approved in the current budget for sheriff's vehicles. As you might imagine, the cost of those has gone up since we figured the cost at budget time. Sheriff's put together a really intense proposal, if you might imagine, and the costs of the Ford Interceptors that he was going to go with are actually now almost unattainable. And he's switching gears, if you can believe this, to go with a Chevy Tahoe because they are so much cheaper. So it really, than the Ford option. So he's actually to the good if you consider that fraud case revenue of only needing to increase this by 4,300. So that's what he needs to get those two new vehicles this year. I will point out salaries and wages, part-time and emergency management. We did a lot of work at budget time. You know, there was a lot of changes at emergency management and 911, a lot of conversations with Director Griffiths, and we just missed budgeting for his part-time planner. That is a position we understand is getting phased out, is going away with the addition of the new emergency management coordinator position. That has been vacant so far this year, so we do have some savings there. But as you recall, the board just approved hiring that position at the top of the scale, so that's going to eat up a lot of that savings we might have had. So we're proposing to build in the 15,000 for that part-time planner position. Another big hit on this budget amendment was the county drain at large. We do a good job at budget time and work with the drain commissioner right up until our budget numbers are due, but we just can't seem to get a good estimate on this county drain at large. You know, anytime a new project, like recent ones, the Little Tobacco, Mission Creek, some of these bigger projects that the Drain Commission gets into, county has to pay its portion of those projects. And they do, you know, I think they're 20-year time frames. So we do have some of those maintenance projects falling off, but Drain Commissioner's really been doing a lot of work recently, and now we're having to build up almost $28,000 additional for county drain at large. Melissa, what's the final, what does this bring the county drain at large up to in the budget? Once we increase, is it 380? 396, almost $400,000 for the county's portion of the drain assessments.
This is county property that abuts the drain. Is that a simple understanding to say it or no?
Kind of, I mean, it's a percent, like, it's a percentage of the roadways,
Yeah.
you know, it's not just county property, it's county proper, I guess I would say, that touches those. So I really scratched my head on that. It's a tremendous amount of money, so but it is what it is. I have not been able to meet with Drain Commissioner Willoughby yet. I do believe we have a meeting on the books today or tomorrow. But I would have liked to have talked to him about this, but one of the places you'll see in the budget amendment where we found money, if you will, is in the landfill. We looked at recent history with the landfill. We looked, which the Drain Commissioner oversees. We looked at the testing requirements. We're outside of this 20-year magic mark where we're not required to test for certain things anymore. PFAS testing is kind of slowing down a little bit too, I feel like. So we have in this budget amendment, you'll see various things in the landfill taken, transferred about 24,000 in this budget amendment. We're saying decrease 24,000, those landfill expenses in the testing, the contractual services, ground maintenance, and the wages that get charged to the drain office for the landfill. So that pretty much tells the story. We've had this overall an increase of just over $100,000 in expenses. We've able to decrease a little over $60,000 of expenses. Found almost 18,000 in revenue, but it's going to cost almost 22,000 in fund balance to right the ship for the first quarter.
Question for you.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
This is just operational, I guess, and it's not a budget of our size, it's minuscule actually. The fax machine costs, why are we not looking at, instead of carrying the actual body of a fax machine, going into an internet-based or email-based fax? I have
Some
that.
of those are,
Okay,
I believe.
okay.
So it might, the line item might still be the
So-
archaic fax machine, but it's like an e-fax or an
Yeah,
email
very good,
fax
'cause
type of
that
thing.
just- one of my offices is set up for the old. Yeah, very little, and the other one is set up to read, and I did all that.
Slick, yes.
So it's-
Maybe we could be more progressive just by updating the line item. It might make us look a little
Oh,
more
no, but,
progressive.
yeah, but fax, fax costs or even machine costs, but if you say machine, you're talking the actual machine.
And which it's not.
Yeah.
Which I shouldn't say it's not. I mean, we do have a couple
I
of
like the sheriff-
actual
the sheriff
fax
probably
machines.
needs That because.
I think courts do as
yeah,
well.
yeah, So,
Mhm.
and who knows what the clerks, they may be in statute. I don't know, so anyway, okay, that was just one thing, yeah. Was that completed or?
That's
Commissioner Galzinski,
that's
anything?
riveting stuff,
Had
I
a
know.
Question comes to mind, based on the discussion this morning, the property for the sheriff's office. I know we rented that out for ag. We continue to pay property taxes on it. Are we gonna have to continue doing that as long as we rent it out?
So it's interesting. I had always thought that once you start to receive revenue, that's what triggers that taxable. But our attorney assures me it's non-taxable to the county, and the taxes that are triggered are because of this renter, and it's a renter tax that he pays per that agreement. My understanding is if we're not renting it out to him, that's no longer
Yeah,
taxable
we're tax
property.
exempt in the township.
Yes. Yes. The only taxes we pay, the public defender's office has a streetlight assessment on Health Parkway over there where they're located, that they actually pay a quote unquote tax bill because it's that streetlight assessment. But other than that, no, we won't be subject to pay it. Now, the lease agreement says farmer will pay the taxes if there are taxes, and they know that going into it. My hope would be to continue that lease, because otherwise we're gonna have to figure out a way to control the vegetation. You know, obviously, we're not gonna plant corn at the front door. But there'll probably be corn around, surrounding the facility to a desirable degree.
Well, I forgot the detail in the contract that the farmer pays the taxes, because I was going back to the parkland in Gratiot County when it was hired over there. And we reopened the parks, but we still had to pay the property taxes for that year.
For that, sure,
Until we got to the new fiscal year,
sure.
and then we didn't have to because it was back open to public use.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, then that's the only trigger, is that we've rented it, that causes that. Mhm.
Any other questions?
I have them. Okay, I'll make a motion that we consider approving fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 2023-05. First quarter budget adjustments for general fund and authorize the board chair to sign the same.
I'll support that.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed the same. That completes that. Next up, invoice list discussion. Commissioner Jazinski, anything in there?
What was something? Do you have questions on it?
There was one, you got me doing the same thing. I think I had a question and now I can't remember. Oh, police interceptor repairs on the sheriff, Pete's Auto Body. That insurance coverage or not covered by insurance? Or are we able to get insurance since we're driving vehicles over 100 miles an hour on back roads here?
Yes, we do. We have $1,000 deductible,
Okay.
but yes, that will be covered by insurance, I'm sure.
So we pay it out, turn it in and adjust it accordingly now.
Correct. We pay it and we present them the invoice and they reimburse us.
I know it wasn't really important, but this is probably at the hats. We had 3 payments. It's just that they hadn't billed us.
That is correct. I think this is the second time this has happened in recent, but yeah, it's not on our end. We're just, saw the email. I think she sent 3 all at once, and I think they're just a little behind out there. Maybe having animal control on site out there was more efficient than they knew. But
And just look at the dollar amount spent towards the jail project. We got 72, almost 73,000 just on bond.
yes, that was
Um,
bond counsel and
then
financial
we had-
advisor.
I think we had a Clark Construction, Clark for 31,000. An integrated, so that's another, that's another 40, what did I say, 7,210,000 spent on the jail project. Haven't we got shovels?
Sure. I will say one good
So-
thing that came, we closed on the USDA
Right,
loan
right.
last Tuesday. That was a great day for us. And one neat thing that came out of that was USDA explaining that they're not going to require Davis-Bacon or prevailing wages on the project. Now, that's something we had always thought was going to be involved for years now because it was USDA financing, but here they were at the table saying no. And we've now confirmed that with them in writing. So Clark is going back to the bidders to see what type of impact that could be. So more to come on that regard.
I got nothing else you, I don't, okay, then we will now go down to announcements. Commissioner Jazinski, any announcements?
None.
I only have one, this is my last,
Mm,
Finance and Administration Committee meeting. I believe I've been on this 8 years, I think. Last 4 as chair. I can't remember.
No, I think you're right, because only 2 years were you on HR, right? And then you've always been on finance since then.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
I remember meeting up in the upstairs, and sitting across from Commissioner Lang, David Lang at the time was chair, and we had David paid me some great compliments, and I won't say what they are because they're political, but they're nice political statements. But I've enjoyed it. It's been fun. It's been rewarding. If there's a committee to be on as far as a chairperson, or excuse me, as a county board member, this is the one. I think this this is why I know Commissioner Jazinski, he watches, he's a budget hawk, and that's great. I'm not quite as much as he is, but him and I agree on pretty much everything. Different, get there differently sometimes, but pretty much agree on pretty much everything on it. And I think most commissioners do. I mean, there has not been too much in this time frame that I've seen. We've had too many in-depth discussions. Most of our stuff is pretty straightforward. And this is a big thing. What we do as commissioners is we control the budget. So this has been a very rewarding experience. And as I leave, I don't know what this holds for the where the board's gonna go with this, but I'm assuming Commissioner Jazinski's still gonna be in it. I don't know if Commissioner Holt's gonna point, but whoever that is, good luck. And I look forward to seeing this committee move forward in the proper direction for years to come. And with Nicole at the helm, I don't think there'll be any her assistants and staff. I don't think there'll be issues at all. And treasurer.
And I like that these guys are showing up too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
There's lessons learned over the years, to involve other people involved instead of just. All right, that's all anything I have for announcements. All right, next I'll call to the public, No public, call to the public.
there's no one at this time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and then at 10:25, then I will adjourn the meeting.
Excellent.
All right. Yep, straight.